Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this latest installment of our Encore Live webinar series. My name is Jon Linker, Program Consultant at Encore Tours, and today we are going to be discussing all things batons. We are honored to have as our special guest Phil Aguglia. He's an award-winning music educator and the owner of PaGu Batons. Phil has been the band director at Kenmore East High School in Tonawanda, New York, outside Buffalo, since 2002. He's been a finalist for the Grammy Foundation Music Educator of the Year Award, among many other honors. And in 2007, in a quest to find a better baton for himself, he ended up making his own baton and thus began his company, PaGu Batons. So Phil, it's really great to have you here, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about PaGu Batons. I'll brag on you a little bit, Phil. PaGu really has become a leader in custom handmade batons, and Phil has designed batons for conductors all around the world, including some very high-profile clients. And last year, the 2020 Oscars featured the first ever woman conductor of the Oscars Orchestra, and she happened to be using a PaGu baton to conduct that group. So the local news in Buffalo actually did a feature on it, and so we want to play you a little bit of that clip right now.
Well, we like to say there's always a Buffalo connection, right? Well, if you saw the Oscars over the weekend, you witnessed history when the first female conductor led the pit orchestra.
Here is Maestra Emir Noon to conduct this year's nominated Best Original Scores.
Yes, never in the Academy Awards' 92 years has a woman conducted the orchestra. And that baton that she's using right there was made by a man right here in Western New York. 2 on Your Side photojournalist Ben Reed shares that man's story in his own words.
Hi, I'm Phil Aguglia. I'm the owner and craftsman of PaGu Batons. In 2007, we got a puppy, and the puppy was getting me up at 4:30 in the morning to go out. And I couldn't get into school. I'm a high school band director. I teach at Kenmore East High School, and I couldn't get into school that early. So I had a lathe in the basement that my dad gave me. So I started to make a baton. This is Emer's signature model baton. She's the conductor of Zelda, the video game, and she's associated with many video games. She's one of the biggest names in the video game world. So when it came time for the Oscar announcement, her husband, Craig, contacted me a couple days in advance, and he said, just so you know, we're going to be announcing that Emer's going to be conducting on the Oscars. She'll be the first conductor, and I want you to be one of the first people to know.
Here is Maestra Emir Noon to conduct this year's nominated Best Original Scores.
So I said, why don't we come up with a ceremonial baton for her to use for this event? He said, sounds great. So that gave me like 4 days to be able to come up with something.
What was it like watching her conduct?
It was amazing. I'm so appreciative and overwhelmed by the attention that this has gotten. I mean, what the door that Emer has opened up for me recently for the attention has been overwhelming.
And pretty good advertising for his baton making business, I would think.
Could be like a Stradivarius one day. You never know.
That's right.
He's got that panache there, PaGu.
I know. I like the sound of it. Well, he got some great international play there, too.
Absolutely.
Panache, PaGu, I like that. I'm sure that was a pretty cool experience, Phil, to be watching that and seeing her use your baton. Maybe just, I'll let you sort of steer this whatever direction you want. I know you're there in your workshop where you make these batons, but maybe you could just start off talking a little bit about, what should conductors be looking for when they're going to get a baton, and what goes into making them, and just how that whole process works about matching a baton to a conductor.
Sure. That was the first time I watched that clip. I knew it was there. I never like listening myself back. As a trumpet player, I hate listening to my own recordings, and same thing with my voice. It's just kind of, I think a lot of people are like that. But when I first started making batons, out of curiosity, I want to know why. If I have 5 batons in front of you, or 3, why did you pick that one? What about you and that instrument clicked? So I started to keep notes, and by the time I was not done, but just decided to stop, I had about 400 conductors who had chosen batons out of a series of them. And this is without me having a system. I just had handles, sticks, and I would glue the sticks together for the conductor in person and say, why did you like this? And after, I would take measurements. Let me measure your forearm. I don't know how much you can see. Let me measure your forearm at a 90-degree angle to the center of your palm. And then I'll measure your thumb width and length to the top knuckle. And I found that 90% of the time, conductors were picking a baton that was about the size of their thumb, but the width of the middle knuckle, length from top knuckle to tip, and balance from the tip in the forearm at a 90-degree angle to the center of the palm. Some people, if you do this, you end up with a longer baton than it's comfortable. So that 90-degree angle here at the elbow is a real important piece. I wish I was a little taller. It would be easier to hit the camera than the angle I've got this thing. But so I took that information, and so I started to do the PaGu process for fitting, because ultimately my goal was, how can I do this online? How can somebody, I really look at baton selection like shoe selection. Like, how do you know if those shoes fit? Do you need a double wide? Do you need a 10.5 or a 10? Men's size, women's size? How does this all work? Because our bodies are all a little bit different. So by coming up with that system based on all those interview questions I did with people and measurements, that gave me the PaGu system of fitting based on your hand, your arm, and it's been pretty successful for me. One of the reasons why I do such a variety of conductors around the world is because these are people that are looking for a solution to a problem, and I'm proud to say many times we are pretty successful. And the nice part about what I'm doing is, if we don't get it right the first time, let's take it back and give you another one. I'm not here to just sell you a piece of wood. I'm here to sell you something that you're going to utilize. So you have 30 days to try it out and make sure it's right for you.
So I just want to jump in and say, I know we've got fellow conductors here in the webinar, so please we'd love to get questions. Throw them into the Q&A box there at the bottom of the Zoom, and we'll get to those, and Phil can answer any questions you might have. I'll just say, I'm a trumpet player as well, Phil, and have done very little conducting, primarily probably in college, as part of classes. So I've never really thought about it, right? When I'm watching the conductor, they're just, okay, there's the stick, they've got it, they're waving it around, and that's what they're doing. I mean, I guess I haven't really thought about it as, an instrument, and that, wow, there's really a big difference between one or the other. Maybe talk about like what goes into that, and what is the difference between one and the other? How does that affect the way somebody, conducts, and the comfort level and all of that?
Sure. And it's going to be, I always tell people, like, I'll have, like, if I'm at a conference or something, I'll have people come over and they'll argue over, well, this company's the best baton, or that was, and I always stop that and say, they're all good. It's just what's right for you. And, there's no wrong way to do something if it works for you. Right. So my approach is about trying to find something that's right. And it's about, if you're only conducting once in a while, it may not matter to you. But if you're doing it for hours a day, and especially orchestral conductors that are on a podium for a long period of time, just doing one piece, you've got to have something that really does work for you. I had a client come from South Korea with a translator, and he was looking for an instrument, and he tried a bunch of them, and he would do circles. And then I asked the translator, so, well, can you explain what he's doing? And he said, between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, if the tip shakes, it's no good. So I don't know I never figured out exactly why that happened, but when he found the right one, he was sold. That was it. That's it probably just had to do with exactly the right balance point for him, where he was holding it, and if that created balance between 3 and 6 o'clock for him. And why is that important? Well, are you putting tension in your hand? Are you squeezing? If you have something that's too small for your hand, and you're putting you got to clamp down on it to feel it. Or if you have something that's too short, and you got to work really hard in your forearm to compensate because you don't think they can see you. These are unconscious decisions. I had this student teacher who was like 6'2", and he was using the real small baton. It was more appropriate for me. And he looked awkward on the podium, and he just conducted awkwardly, and I refit him. And his confidence level changed, and how he conveyed what he wanted to the students changed dramatically. And most of what we do as a trumpet player, right? It's about confidence. You pick up a mouthpiece or a trumpet, you want to feel confident that the notes are going to slot where you want them to. If you feel like you got to guess it all, it's like, this isn't the right piece for me. And that's kind of how it is with a baton. That's how the Flat Spot series came out. One of my signature artists contacted me before he was a signature artist, and he said, I want a baton that I feel secure with, and I don't something about. And so we came up with this idea to put a flat spot on it. I don't know if you can see that. And and by doing so, gave him a place that he can lock his thumb in and be able to conduct and feel very secure with. And then, over time, I've developed this flat spot series and be able to come up with things that are more versatile. So you can actually hold them in different ways, not just on the flat with your thumb, but your index finger, be able to wave it or lock it in back here and be able to get more control this way. Every piece of music is a little bit different. If you're holding the instrument, the baton the same way, or approaching everything the same way, sometimes it doesn't really allow you to be as expressive as if you have a little more flexibility with the instrument. It gives you different feels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and if I'm remembering correctly, your whole journey kind of started because you were having some injury problems, or
well,
talk about what led you to try to find something better for you.
Sure, and that happened a little later. I ended up having shoulder surgery, and that's really on me. I'm a tense person. I'm an intense person, and so I grip that baton, and ultimately, what I found for me is that If I had music that was too hard for the kids, I was working harder than I needed to. If the kids could play the music, I could free myself up and be able to do stuff that was more expressive. And I put all that stress on my shoulder. Now, other conductors have different reasons. David Talley from LSU contacted me. He was about to have some shoulder surgery, and he said, "Do you think you can help before I go under the knife?" So we came up with this shaped baton here for him with a tension-free balance point, meaning when you put it in your hand, that the balance point is going to be up further on the shaft, which means that the tip is going to take the stress off of your arm. Tuck it back in your hand a little bit more, relax the index finger and thumb, and let the baton do the work in the wrist, as opposed to a lot of this movement. So those things can help mitigate some of those other problems. Hand tension. If the handle's too small for you, maybe you could go to a larger handle. It's ultimately why I came up with the Il Siciliano model. It's a balsa wood series, really lightweight. It just sits in your hand. You don't have to grab it. Just sits there, has no weight at all in the handle because of the material. And then it allows you to just move your wrist, and the stick does a lot of the work. This is way too long for me. I just put it together just to demonstrate.
It's really interesting for me, and you've already sort of shown us a little bit of some of the differences in batons, the length, the shape of the handle. I mean, maybe talk about this. What are all the different varieties of shapes and sizes and materials and different things that go into the different types of batons that can be made, and what they're first, who uses what?
Sure. Okay. Well, first let's talk about wood differences. I'm going to just take this for a second and just show you. I organize my woods by species. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And this allows me to grab them pretty quickly. So I know that a Purple Heart wood is going to be heavier. Where are we? Much heavier than, let's say, a walnut. Someone might say, well, walnut's a heavy wood. It's really not when you compare it with exotic woods, or an ebony, which is like really heavy. And so if you've got that really heavy wood or really lightweight wood, and I even brought out a piece of balsa wood, and balsa weighs nothing. This is like a piece of paper in your hand. And so you have to balance that with the right length stick, just simple physics. So if I have, this stick in my hand, and I put this piece of balsa with a little bit of red heart on it, the balance point is going to be right about here. Now watch what happens if I change that, and I'll put this Pernambuco wood on. It's a much skinnier handle. It's only 3/4 of an inch at its widest point compared to this large handle, which is 1.25 inches. A lot more material here, but the weight is about the same, because just because of the actual weight, the mass of the instrument of the wood. Now, if I take something like one of our aesthetic series, these are pretty heavy. Now the balance point's back here more on this long shaft, and it gets small. The difference gets smaller as we go further up. And that's a starting point. So when somebody says, I need a 12-inch baton, I can't use something that's heavy like this with this shaft and bring it down to 12 inches, which is around here. I have to find something that's going to be more lightweight, that's going to counterbalance with it properly. In terms of who uses what, one of the very first signature artists I had was Joanne Folletta of the Buffalo Philharmonic. Because like you said, I started making these in my basement. It was just for fun. And the Buffalo Philharmonic musicians contacted me and said, Joanne's 10th year anniversary is coming up. Would you be interested in making a baton for her? And I said, no, because I wasn't good at it. It wasn't, and I was just doing it for fun. They came back 2 more times and said, would you please? And so I yielded, but then I had to take I took some of my stuff to a woodworking store, and I showed the guys who were woodworkers at the store what I was doing, and they laughed at me. They said, "You're a carpenter, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I have had a construction business for most of my life." I said, "Yeah, there's a difference in woodworking." And they showed me, how to really finish a product and create something that was beautiful as well as functional. And so, this was, Joanne's first baton, at least the shape of it. This is her signature baton. She's got two signature ones now, but and other artists that we have are Daniel Floyd from England and Emer Noon. Emer and her husband just wrote all the music for a cartoon movie. It just came out. It's pretty cool. I forgot the name of it, but Damon Talley down at LSU. The reason why I chose some of these people to be signature artists is because their instrument, the baton I made for them is unique. So it's not about the name of the artist necessarily. It's more about what is it that this handle will provide other people, and if it's unique enough, I'll name it after them.
Interesting. So I know, I've seen your table at a couple of conferences, and there's a mix, but it looked like there were a lot of like younger, maybe folks getting right out of college or looking for batons. I'm assuming there are some folks that know probably exactly what they want, and they're telling you this is what I need. But with other folks who are kind of trying to experiment, is it more just like trial and error? Can you what's your process to kind of figure out quickly, or how to advise them on what's going to work best for them?
I try not to be the authority on what's going to work for you, but I have a good idea. Like, I can look at you and measure your thumb. If it's 2¼ inches long and you're really narrow, like you're 3/4 inch narrow, I'll grab a couple of handles that are in that size range and say, how do these feel? And, don't worry about the balance. Don't worry about the length. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll balance it the way they want it. And usually that works out pretty well. The reason why you'll see more young folks at the conferences come over is because there's a lot of college students that are there that are getting excited about this new career. And, a lot of the professors already have a suitcase full of batons, but they'll come over as well and get a couple themselves. But that's why there's usually that kind of youthful enthusiasm.
So I know as a trumpet player, lots of instrumentalists. Depending on the gig, you might see an array of instruments, right? Depending on what you're doing, several different kinds of trumpets. Is it similar with batons? Does conductors typically use one, or do they have, depending on the piece or the group they're conducting, are they maybe using several different ones?
Everybody's a little different. I've seen plenty of conductors that walk around with a quiver with 8 or 12 batons in it, and I've seen others that just carry 1 or 2 with them. I personally I think 3 is a good number. That's why I make my baton cases that'll fit 3 batons, because I think that's, you've got 2 you really love, and then 1's your spare. And the ones you love, I suggest you have 1 with a natural shaft that's and 1 with a white shaft. And the reason is because of lighting in different venues will allow 1 to be more visible than others. I experienced it myself many times, but never more than after we got back from COVID. When the kids are in the building, but we're in the auditorium, the kids are lined up 12 feet apart in the aisles of the auditorium. And it turns out that some kids could see one shade and some could see the other, like depending on the lighting right where you were standing. So what I did is for myself, I made a chimera baton where I painted half, like I just spray painted white on one side and left it natural on the other. Said, well, good luck. Maybe hopefully some of you will. And that helped a little bit.
So we've got a question from one of our attendees, Charlotte, who says, the best baton I've ever used had a cork handle. What are your thoughts about cork handles? Perhaps balsa wood could work for me because it is also light. So any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, cork is really popular, especially in Europe. Those King David batons with the cork handles are all over the place. Cork is going to give you that tip heaviness because there's no weight in that handle. So the balsa series was really my idea of coming up with what I call classy cork. It's got the same properties in terms of it feels soft in the hand. It's really lightweight. It'll give you the same balance feel, except it's got a finish on it, and it's I think the two-tone is attractive. Not everybody. That's a real personal thing, and these will live longer than the cork ones. In terms, the cork ones get kind of ratty looking after a while.
We got another question here from Daniel. It says, "Greetings from another trumpeter conductor." You know, I was in Air Force bands, and like I'd say about 90% of my commander conductors were former trumpet players. There's something, I don't know what that says about us, but there it is. So he says, "I'd like to hear a little more about how style of grip or conductors who tend to vary their grip can impact preference for specific handle styles."
Okay, so let me take a Philharmonic model for a second. The Phil, I call it that because I made it for myself, and it's got a flat spot here and a 1-inch ball on the end, 3/4 of an inch throat, and a little bit of a curve here, and that's for the middle finger to settle, right? And so the reason why I chose this one is because if you're holding it like this with the thumb on the flat spot, this gives you that down and dirty, right? Let's stay in time, that march feel, that just real exacting kind of conductor, right? But if I want to do some more lyrical stuff, something that's that second movement, you flip that around and you put your index finger on there. You let this sit right in your hand like this, and all of a sudden that east-west conducting just flows. The baton's laying on my middle finger, and I don't have to do anything. I can just let the music work. Let the baton work to make music. And then the other thing is I can take this and push it back into my palm, grip it a little bit more, get my fingers up a little bit higher. If I want something a little bit more, I want to have a lot of control. I want it right in the forearm, and I don't want to have a lot of wrist right now. So that's what I mean about being able to vary up what you're doing with your hand, depending on the style of music. I don't want to give a conducting lesson per se, because everybody's going to take that differently. You know, that's just me personally.
Great.
I hope that answers the question.
Keep the questions coming, folks, if you've got them. I know I saw a Facebook post recently, Phil, that you recreated one of Mahler's batons. I think you have it there. That seemed pretty interesting. Maybe you could just tell that story a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, so I had a young man contact me who was a real fan of Mahler's, and he said, you know, I would really like to know if you could recreate his baton. And he sent me a picture from the Mahler Society of what Mahler's baton looked like, and there's no measurements with it, so I just, you know, kind of guessed what I think it would look like, and so I came up with this, and I don't know how much detail you can see. My view is very different than what yours is, and so I came up with this, and I made a limited edition of these, and I sold 40 in 2 days. Like, people just emailed me or DM'd me and said, "Oh, I want that." And I just made 2 that were like this out of this laminated birch. That just it's a different feel. There's no handle at all, but it's got this little bit of a curve in here for you to feel like your hand nestle in. And if you want a little thickness, you come up right where the ridge is, and it goes into the palm. And I think for certain things, this could be cool. Like, I know there was a couple of conductors that said they're planning to do Mahler soon, so it would be really appropriate to have that and talk to the audience about the instrument and how authentic that experience could be for them. So I was glad to make them. It took me a little bit to figure out the process, because in the old days, I don't know if they were doing like a whittle it kind of thing, but they certainly didn't have a powered lathe. There were lathes that you can control with a pedal, like an old sewing machine. But I came up with a method of making these that's kind of cool from a crafting perspective. Yeah.
That just brings a thought to my head. Recently, we had the opportunity. We did an event in Italy with some directors that we work with, and we were able to visit Cremona, where they've been making violins and violas, for centuries, and Stradivarius and Amati instruments were made there. We got to visit a luthier workshop and saw kind of the process of how they make the instruments. And what stood out to me is how it really hasn't changed in hundreds of years. I mean, it's the same tools, the same. And I'm just wondering, it seems to me, though, that's a little bit different with batons, because obviously there's equipment now they didn't have back then. I'm imagining the process of actually making the batons has changed quite a bit over the last 100, 200 years.
Sure. I mean, if Mahler was conducting with the turn of the 1900s, so, and this was an elegant instrument at that time. But from what I read, the first real conductor using a baton was like in the early 1800s. And I've seen everything from tree branches to stuff like this. And the concept of a handle. I mean, and then you had Toscanini, who had this sword. It just depends. There was no rhyme or reason, and I'm sure everybody had a justification for what they do. Don't we all? Right? No, this is the best way to do it because I'm trying not to get into that too much and let people make that decision for themselves and help them gear them that way. But in terms of what we do to make a baton, some people use a CNC machine, so they're all exactly the same. Some just a bunch of guys getting together in a garage and turning them. And for myself, I'll turn this around a little bit. I have a really small hobbit shop. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, so I can fit in a small box. And I just have these 3 lathes here set up so I can kind of do like assembly line work here in my own shop. I know every tool's got a purpose, but where I am at in my development as a baton maker and as a contributor to this to the world of baton making is trying to come up with a wooden stick that's going to be more durable than the traditional birch sticks that we have, because these are pretty flimsy. And it's kind of like luck of the draw if you get one that's a nice solid stock, or if there's a little bit of a weakness in the wood. What is wood? So I'm constantly working on developing. So I know we can use carbon fiber. I know we can use fiberglass. I don't really want to use those materials because I feel like I'm a wood smith. I want to use wood, and I want my clients to come away with a wood product that they can rely on. And I'm working really hard on that. And we're pretty close to being able to produce something this summer that's going to be pretty special in the fall.
Awesome. I mean, well, this has been really great, Phil. I appreciate all this insight and showing you around the shop. If folks have more questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A box. I do want to let everybody know we have a really special thing we're going to be doing with Phil next summer. He is going to be sort of the host of a trip to Sicily and to Rome in Italy, and it's going to be open to other directors, any other music folks or family members that want to go, and it will include 5 nights in this beautiful Baroque town in Italy. Lots of musical events. There'll be a conducting workshop as part of that, attending concerts, and just a chance to sort of absorb the culture and experience these places, and and share that with Phil on the trip. And we are going to drop some information here in the chat box for everybody. We've almost got the details completely finalized, but we mostly do. And so we've got a landing page we've created that if you'd like to get more information on the trip, we'd just fill that out and send us your info, and we'd be happy to give you that information when we've got it available. But it's really going to be an exciting thing next July. It's going to be a 10-day trip. You can see it's in the chat box now. 5 nights in Sicily and Modica and 3 nights in Rome. It's just going to be an amazing musical, cultural experience. And like I said, also a conducting workshop. There could be some opportunity to perform or conduct for folks when you're there. Try out batons, all kinds of interesting things. So we would love to have everybody join us who is interested in doing that. So I wanted to let everybody know about that. Just a couple other things I'm going to mention about Encore, if anybody is interested in doing any trips with their ensembles. we are actively working with a lot of groups that are looking to plan for next summer, that who've kind of either had trips postponed for a couple of years, haven't been able to do things, and now everybody's kind of looking forward to getting back out there again. So right now we are offering a worry-free guarantee. Anybody registers by August 1. You've got a couple of months till October 1st to cancel and get all your money back, just to give folks a little bit more time to see how this all plays out and make sure they're comfortable and confident planning a trip. We also have a couple of new protection plans, including one where now you can basically get a 100% cash refund up until 4 days before departure for any reason whatsoever if you need to cancel. So hopefully we're hoping those things are going to be a big help to folks to feel confident in getting back out there and traveling again. So I wanted to let everybody aware of those, and please check out Phil's info on his trip to Italy, because it's going to be fantastic. And unless anybody has any more questions on batons, I don't know, Phil, if there's any other things you want to say in closing, or anything we haven't touched on?
No, I'm really looking forward to the Sicily trip. I think that, going to Rome and then going into Sicily, there's just so much culture, and we're trying to develop something where you can go and be a musician, and you can go and be a conductor, and you can go and be just a tourist. It's not like a high school band trip where we're holding your hand the whole time, but there's activities every day that we're hoping every day that will be expose you to the folk music, the orchestral music, the concert band music, all the different types of music that's happening in the region. We've got a really wonderful relationship we're developing over there. And they're helping us put that together with the locals. And I understand that Michelin star restaurant is also on the menu.
Yes, in fact, there's several fantastic Michelin star restaurants in and around the town of Modica, these really beautiful Baroque towns in southern Sicily. And so that's one of the things we've got coordinated for the group, is having dinner at one of these restaurants one night. And kind of the way we have it set up is that there are some core experiences that everyone will share while they're there, like that dinner at that restaurant, and potentially attending an outdoor opera in Rome, those kind of things. But there's also a lot of free time built in for folks to just sort of explore the area for themselves. It's a little bit of a mix. It's not like you're all being dragged from one spot to another to look at things. It's going to be a chance to absorb the culture on your own, but also have these shared musical experiences together. So we think it's going to be a great experience for those who are able to go. So hopefully you'll send us your info, and we'll keep in touch with folks and let you know about it. We'll have all the details ready to go here in the next couple of weeks.
Sounds great. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions about conducting batons, or even we do plaques and other things too for retirements, for graduation, special occasions, unique things that are not even on our website, just send an email.
Right. I know it's PaGuBatons.com, right? If folks want to check out your site.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Phil, again, for taking the time to be with us today and share all this. It's been great. For all the folks who joined us this afternoon, thank you so much. And we've got a little bit of a slideshow to give you a taste of what may be in store for you if you join us on our trip to Sicily, that you can enjoy watching and enjoy the music and the slides as we end today's session. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.